So now we go on to the Olympians with chapter 6. So is there a right answer to these questions? Is Cronus a tyrant or benevolent? Is Aphrodite daughter of Uranus or Zeus? You pick. That's the way this is going to be this semester is, you get to pick your preference to a certain extent. An important concept in this chapter is Xenia, and you say it with the Z, but it's important to ancient Greek culture, and Xenia is the sacred rule of hospitality, or the generosity and courtesy that you show to those who are far from home or associates of the host. In other words, if a traveler comes to your door, you give that person shelter and food. Of course, the guest should be a good guest to the host. All right, so with Zeus, we'll talk about it a bit. There were 12 Titans and there were 12 Olympians. And I know this photograph that we're looking at only shows 7, but trust me, there are 12. These 7 just happen to be probably the most primary. People built temples to them. Gods inspired and were fed. These gods were immortal and on Mount Olympus, and they were glorious in appearance when they were on the mount. These 12 were recognized by the 6th century in Athens. There's an altar there. So 6 of them are children of Cronus and Rhea. So 6 of them are children of Cronus and Rhea, and they are Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, and Hades. So those guys are the children of Cronus and Rhea. The other Olympians are the children of Zeus and Hera. Not all of them from their union, but one way or another, it's either Zeus or Hera. You have Ares. He's the god of war, and he's not very well liked. You have Athena, and she's associated with wisdom and special birth. You have Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Aphrodite. And Aphrodite, 2 versions, is she could have either come from Uranus's genitals or Zeus's body, your choice. And then Hephaestus, Hera's crippled son. So Zeus, you want to read through the chapter and be familiar, but the highlights we'll go over. Zeus, known as Jupiter in Roman times, is the king of the gods, father of the sky, and his weapon is the thunderbolt. He's associated with the bull and the eagle. They're strong, they're powerful. Sometimes he carried an aegis, a goatskin shield. Under the aegis, there's the authority, the protection. So his job was to uphold the traditional Greek ways, particularly Xena, which, comes over and over throughout the stories. He sided with the Trojans in the Trojan War, betrayed by Hera, who sided with the Greeks. And he has unions with a whole bevy of mortal women. Sometimes the names meant concepts, sometimes qualities, but he just had an eye for all the women. And it's a way of explaining how those abstract concepts came about, all those women and their names, and how Zeus acquired them, like swallowing Metis for wisdom. And then you have Hera, and she is known as Juno in the Roman tradition, and she represented fertility of women. She's often associated with the cow, and some of her temples are even older than Zeus. So she's often associated with the cow, nurturing. She received magic apples from her grandmother Gaia. She persecutes Hercules because he is Zeus's son with another woman. And she despised all of Zeus's illegitimate children and their mothers. Disney's Hercules, which we've talked about, changed Hercules to Zeus's and Hera's son, and that changes everything in the story. So she goes after Zeus's love and illegitimate children. She really goes after Hercules. She had 3 children with Zeus. Hephaestus was her child, but not by Zeus. She fights a lot with Zeus too. She is his equal, or as close to being his equal as any of the gods come. And she tricks him some of the time too. We also have Poseidon, and he's king of the sea. And in the Roman tradition, he's known as Neptune. and he is a brother of Zeus, one of the Olympians. He's one of the earliest names of a god found in writing in Linear B on tablets, going all the way back to the 1200 BC. So, he's an old god as far as the Greeks are concerned. He carried a trident. It has 3 teeth or prongs. He was known as Violent, an earth shaker. He's also known for the storms at sea and the earthquakes. We forget about the earthquakes. We think about the sea and the storms, but the earthquakes were his too. And he's married to Amphitrite. Their son is Triton. Merman, he's half man, half fish. He blows into a conch shell. Poseidon is also the father to one of the Cyclopes, Polyphemus, which you'll find in the Odyssey. Greeks were afraid of the dangers of the sea, so Poseidon is intimidating, much like Zeus. And finally, we have Hades. And Hades is the king of the dead, king of the underworld. In the Roman tradition, he's known as Pluto, and he's a brother of Zeus as well, one of the Olympians. But he, unlike the other ones, never went and lived on Mount Olympus. And he had a magic helmet which made him invisible. And we'll discuss more about that. But you want to remember that he's invisible with that magic helmet, and that his wife ends up being Persephone's. But that's a whole other story that we give practically an entire chapter to. And then the one last thing you want to remember is the concept of anthropomorphism. Okay, gods in the Greek tradition were anthropomorphic. In other words, they had human qualities, and that's how we could relate to them. These gods shared human traits, both good and bad. And so, we go and we have those stories, and it's a mix of all of them, and it just goes back and forth each of the times. So this covers chapter 6. It's a very brief going over, but a lot of the stories that are in chapter 6 are very forward. They're easy to understand.